We have our organs which are related with the posterior abdominal wall, so we have a significantly big number of plexuses. And these plexuses, it has been quite obvious from this given picture. You can see that you are shown kidney and suprarenal. Obviously suprarenal is not our focus, and our main focus is, you can see this mesh of the nerves, and that this mesh of the nerves, these are small areas, and these are different ganglion. Like you're looking at celiac ganglion, you are looking at the superior mesenteric ganglion. We learned that these ganglions, they run across the great vessels and they are named according to them. And then you are looking at, these are the sympathetic chains going way down, way below the fifth lumbar vertebrae. They go down even to the coccyx. So ganglionic part never ends here, it goes way down. This is what you were asking yesterday, I remember. So this is how the whole organization is being set up, and these ganglions, they are well connected. We talk a little bit about that, their organization. So I'd like to talk a little bit more how they are helping us and how they are important, because these organs, look, we have done that there is one peripheral nervous system and there is one in peripheral nervous system. We had the autonomic part, and then we had the other, the routine plexuses. Routine plexuses are not designed to have supplies in certain areas, but these are the ones which are mandatory and they are important. So routine plexuses, by mean that you have cervical plexus, you have lumbar plexus, you have brachial plexus, you have sacral plexus. So you learn so many plexuses there. And these special plexuses, because most of the structures which we have to learn here in this region are the organs, and these organs, they need sympathetic and parasympathetic. We learn that the sympathetic is reaching through the sympathetic chain, and then we have the parasympathetics, and those parasympathetics are coming in the upper part via the vagus nerve, and the lower part from S2, 3 and 4 segments. They are contributing and supplying in different regions of the parasympathetic supply. So this is a comprehensive slide. Let's move here. So we are looking at our organizational structure. There you are looking at the ventral rami, and you are looking at the dorsal rami. You are looking at the spinal cord full length from C1 till the L1 level where spinal cord ends, and after that we have mesh of the nerves which come from this lower part, and spinal cord finish at this level at L1, and then beyond that these are direct emergence from the lowermost part of the spinal cord, and they are going to the respective areas. So far so we have touched upon this segment a little bit. We talk about these spinal intercostal nerves, we talked about the lumbar plexus, we touched upon the sacral plexus when you are learning the lower limb, we touched upon the pudendal nerve which is also coming from that area. So we'll recap it a little bit. I hope you understand now what are the segmental nerves and what are the non-segmental nerves. I spent time in explaining all that. I hope these concepts are clear. Is there any question from this much what I said? So now going further. So now we are looking at the upper ones, C1 to C4, and what they are giving us the cervical plexus. And it is supplying muscles and the skin, which were in the neck. And then it has some contribution. We know somebody who migrated from the neck, that was the diaphragm, so it carries its innervations, and that was the name of the phrenic, so that came from that segment. Now coming down, so this is the area C3, 4 and 5, my phrenic nerve, it comes down and it supplies so many structures, diaphragm, and then we had diaphragmatic pleura, and then we have peritoneum and the fibrous pericardium. So these were the structures, mediastinal pleura, these were the structures which were innervated by this phrenic nerve. Going further down, we talk about this brachial plexus. We learn this muscles of the upper limb were innervated by this area. And then we touched upon L1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, we call them, these are the one who makes the lumbar plexus, and we learn that these nerves, they are organized within the substance of the psoas major, and some of them are coming from its lateral border, some of them are coming from its medial border, and one is coming from its anterior surface. Those who are coming from the middle border, there we learn obturator nerve, and the other one was a continuation which was going to the sacral plexus, so we call it lumbosacral trunk. Am I right? Then we said L2, 3 and 4, L2, 3 and 4, the ventral rami always make plexus. Dorsal rami never contribute to a plexus anywhere from C1 to L1, like whatsoever nerves are we have from the lower sacral segment. So this L2, 3, 4, we said we have femoral nerve and we have obturator nerve from the same source. So what is happening? The ventral ramus divides into anterior division and posterior division. Anterior division makes my obturator and posterior division makes my femoral. Right? Somebody asked this thing, so I have to make it clear in the class. Now this green segment which I am making here, that I will be saying for, this is the sacral plexus, and then this is for the, you know about the lower limb and the structures here. Now there is some more contribution from this segment and these lower three nerves. Where we are using this lower three nerves, we are using this S2, 3 and 4, and these are spinal nerves, and look, all of them are spinal nerves, and their priority is to supply the skeletal muscle. They are not for smooth muscles. So skeletal muscle, what's skeletal muscle? This pudendal nerve is main supply for the sphincters. What sphincters? The sphincters who control the anus and the sphincter who control the urethra. These are voluntary sphincters. Their action is under our control. The anus has 3 sphincters, 3 external sphincters, and urethra has 1 external sphincter. All of them are skeletal. None of them is smooth. So their supply is from this pudendal nerve. And pudendal nerve is not only this much, it also has a significant area of supply, which I think we'll be looking into in lecture number 10. I'll be showing you the distribution, the area of distribution of supply of pudendal nerve. Guys, pudendal nerve is important. So just be read with these things which are related to the pudendal nerve. Now, I hope things are clear on this slide. Any concern, any question, any ambiguity? Clear to everybody?
Yes. Can you just read about it within the nerve sphincter?
What part?
Like sphincter, external sphincter.
It supplies external sphincters.
Internal?
Did I say?
It doesn't supply the external or the internal?
Only externals. Now, I'm showing a little bit more. S5 and then coccyx. So these are going down. So this was all somatic. We talked about this slide before, I'm talking again. If you have any doubts, please clear your doubts. This is the making of I'm talking about C8, T1. Why I'm bringing them here? Because I think they are important at this level. And we can see that what I'm bringing here is sympathetic nerves. I'm not talking spinal nerves now. The sympathetic nerve, we know that they have in the lateral horn from T1 to L2. So you're looking at T1. Lower limit is L2. So we have this nucleus, which is a sympathetic nucleus, which is present in the lateral horn of the spinal cord. We have ventral horn and we have dorsal horns. So from there, and then from here, from the ventral horn, we have the motor nerve, which is coming, but I'm not probably showing at the moment. But what we can see, it is running with this spinal nerve T1, but through these rami commitants, it has been relaying into these sympathetic chain ganglions. We have a series of ganglions on right side, we have a series of ganglions on left side. They extend from the neck and they go right into the lower part of the pelvis. Where the sympathetic chain, the ganglion, they meet, they merge, and they make one ganglion impart. It's not important for you to learn individual ganglions and all that. Only we have to learn a little bit about that. But simply remember this part, that these ganglions they contribute in providing sympathetic supply to all of our smooth muscles of the body. And these smooth muscles, these nerves, they reach with the sympathetic fibers, they reach with the spinal nerves, or where spinal nerves are not going, let's say the spinal nerves are not going in the region of head, inside the cranial cavity, no spinal nerve is there. So what happens there? When arteries from the superior cervical ganglion, when common carotid is leaving, going towards to supply the structures in the head and neck, now around this common carotid artery, a plexus of sympathetic fibers, they make a mesh around, and this mesh goes everywhere where the external carotid, internal carotid and their branches go. So sympathetic in the region of head and neck is, we don't have too many sympathetic ganglions, like we have no sympathetic ganglion in the head, but we have three pair of sympathetic ganglions in the neck, and these ganglions are primarily supplying directly, and then their sympathetic fibers are making a spiral over the arteries, and wheresoever these arteries and wheresoever their branches from the external carotid and branches from the internal carotid, wheresoever they go, so they carry sympathetic fibers with them. So this is how the sympathetic fiber reach to the area of head and neck. And down in the abdomen, now we learn that the sympathetic fibers we can take out only from T1 to L2. Above and below, we cannot take it out from the sympathetic chain. So then these sympathetic fibers, they are made available for us in this sympathetic chain. And now for the abdominal supply, for the supply of the abdominal organs, because it is full of organs, and all organs have glands, and glands needs, and there are so many smooth muscles, there is so much things going across within our abdomen and the renal area and the pelvis area. So for them we had contributions, and these contributions are derived. Three of the ganglions who take part here, and these are my I need splanchnic nerves. So splanchnic nerves are primarily sympathetic nerves. So they are outcome of these, because where I don't have contribution through the spinal nerve, so we derive, for the organs, we derive special sympathetic nerves, and these sympathetic nerves have been given the name of splanchnic nerves. The word splanchnic is a synonym, like other words. If I don't want to say splanchnic nerve, if you think it's difficult, I can say visceral nerve. The sympathetic chain gives visceral branches, and one is the greater visceral, lesser visceral, and least visceral. If you think the word splanchnic is a little bit dangerous for you, so it's nothing but, if I say other way around, it is a visceral nerve. So splanchnic or visceral is the same, has same meaning. Two different words but have the similar meaning, similar interpretation. I hope this point is clear. So these nerves which emerge from the sympathetic chain, and they are going to supply the organs who are present within the abdomen and pelvis. So these are known as the splanchnic nerves, or we can say other words, we can call them visceral nerves. Is this clear? So now there is a wide ramifications through this preganglionic sympathetic fibers, which is coming from the spinal cord, can communicate with corresponding sympathetic ganglion. So it comes here, it relays in this neuron, postganglionic sympathetic neuron, and from there, through gray ramifications, my postganglionic sympathetic fibers run with this spinal nerve. So this is a normal pattern which is happening. So dorsal rami and ventral. So now we had gray ramifications and we had white ramifications. I hope this concept is clear. Because lower down, what is missing? We don't have white ramifications. Below to T2, L2, there is no white ramifications. So gray ramifications is there. So we can take out sympathetic fiber anywhere, but we cannot take out sympathetic fiber from the spinal cord anywhere above or below T1, above the T1 or below the L2. Then we have to depend on the sympathetic chain who has already got it. Is this point clear? So the number one is the synapse and distribution with the spinal nerve, at the same level. So this is happening same level how it is happening. Make sense? Now, sympathetic chain, these postganglionic fibers, they run down and run up. Right? It goes to C8, and you can see that as I was talking, C8 don't have white ramicometer. It only has gray rami. So the sympathetic can go with the spinal nerve, but cannot be taken from the spinal cord. We don't have that facility. And this is the second pattern when it's supplying, it's getting a spinal nerve, getting the sympathetic from a place where there is no white ramicometer. So it's taking from the sympathetic chain. Now it cannot take from the spinal cord at this level. This is the second, distributed with spinal nerve at higher or lower levels. And the third option, number 3 option, finds a direct branch to heart, lungs or esophagus. Right? So this is so direct branches we learned that when we were doing the thoracic cavity in our pulmonary section, we learned that we had sympathetic branches from the sympathetic chain which were contributing in making cardiac plexuses and pulmonary plexuses. Is this clear? So this is the third option of supply. And now, what happens next? You can see that these fibers, they run up. So they reach to the highest ganglion in the neck, superior cervical ganglion. And then these fibers, they go around the arteries. They make a mesh around the artery. And simply what we are talking about how these sympathetic nerves provide distribution to the smooth muscle whosoever are present throughout our body. We have smooth muscles in the blood vessels. We have smooth muscles in the glands. We have smooth muscles in the viscera. So these smooth muscles, and we have smooth muscles in the skin for various functions. So these smooth muscles, we have smooth muscles in the eye, like all the organs and everywhere we have smooth muscles. The superior cervical ganglion. So that is to head and neck structure. And this is the fourth type of supply, synapse with the postganglionic neuron at higher or lower levels in the superior cervical ganglion. And now, this is another option which I was talking, and that I called as the splanchnic nerve or the visceral nerve. And that is the arrangement for the abdomen. The organs which are there in the abdomen or in the pelvis. So what we call it goes to these sympathetic ganglion. These ganglions which are present, this is the celiac trunk, so we call it celiac ganglion. So now prevertebral ganglion and for example celiac ganglion. So now abdominal aorta is shown for you. So now this is celiac artery. Now this one is a splanchnic nerve, a visceral nerve. And what we call, this is the fifth type of arrangement. And what is that? Finds a splanchnic nerve and synapse in the pre-aortic abdominal ganglion. So it goes and it synapses with these ganglions. We learned, we were good with that. Greater splanchnic supplies where, lesser splanchnic goes to which ganglion, and least splanchnic goes to which ganglion. This is what you were asking me yesterday. Yes?
Doctor, isn't the greater splanchnic comes from T5 to T9?
Right now I'm not giving from where it's coming. I'm just showing you an overall organization. How splanchnics have been formed. This is an example. Nobody has said which splanchnic it is. Is it written? I'm not saying is great, is less or least. Or is lumbar splanchnic. Or is a sacral splanchnic. So this is an example how a splanchnic nerve is formed. So idea was, what are the 5 different ways how the sympathetic fibers have reached to different areas of distribution in different regions of the body. Is this concept clear so far? Now, after this, you can see that from this there emerge not one, many postganglionic fibers, and they are going to contribute in various plexuses which are widely distributed throughout. So postganglionic neurons hitchhike on the branches of arteries supplying organs. So again they are running, how they are reaching there, these branches are very weak. So when we are dissecting, when we are handling with arteries, we have to be careful that with these arteries, sympathetic fibers are also coming. So if we are damaging, cutting the arteries, we should be aware of the fact that we may damage the sympathetic fibers. Because these sympathetic fibers, they run with these arteries and their branches, they supply their smooth muscle and they supply wheresoever we need to supply in the organ. Because you might have asked me this question, how these sympathetic fibers, they looks very weak, how they reach to the different organs in the abdomen and pelvis, but they reach through these vessels, through these arteries. Is this clear? Now, this yellow thing is indicating visceral afferent pain fibers. So you can see that the sensation of pain which is coming from any organ, the afferents, and it relates to dorsal root ganglion at different levels. Is that right? Clear? Now, same picture, little bit advanced. So we talk about visceral afferent pain fibers. And I hope this concept is clear. How we know we have pain in our pain? Who tells us? Sympathetic fibers. They bring us the information. And these are visceral afferent fibers. Now you can see that we talk about it, how it grows and relates. So pain fibers travel through splanchnic nerves, pass through the sympathetic trunk, and enter the spinal nerve via the rami committents. Their cell bodies live in the dorsal root ganglions, where they are neighbors with those of the somatic sensory neurons. Is this point clear? So this is how the pain which originates any of our abdominal organ, any of our pelvic organ, can be perceived into our spinal cord levels. You remember when I was talking for ureter, I mentioned you different dermatomal levels. This one, if the pain is here, we have T1 and this much, then L1 and L2. So this is what explains that mechanism. Now, this is there for everything. So now pain fibers are also found in the direct branches and plexuses supplying the thoracic and abdominal organs. So now this is for up the cerebral cortex, because from where we are getting this? We are getting the sympathetic neurons which have direct connections from the brain. But brain sends the sympathetic tunnel, sympathetic cable, but it allows a small portion in the spinal cord from where the sympathetic can come out. I myself never understand when it's coming from the brain, then why don't it supply in the head and neck region from directly, but this is a mechanism, this is the enemy. That it has to leave the brain, it has to reach to T1 to L2, and then it supplies upwards in the same place and downwards. So now, coming back, how these plexuses are formed and what is happening here. We have the abdominal aorta, and we know it bifurcates at L4 level, and then it gives certain branches of it, and there we were talking about the sympathetic chain. Now sympathetic chain, we have lumbar sympathetic trunk, because we are in the abdomen. We are not in the thoracic cavity. This is, aorta is not seen, abdominal aorta is not seen in the thorax. Abdominal aorta is a part of the abdomen. It leaves the thorax at T12 and we are talking at L3, L4. So now we are looking at the part of the sympathetic chain which we assume, which we know it is present in the abdominal cavity. So, and the region it corresponds, the lumbar region, so we call it lumbar sympathetic trunk. When it reaches to the pelvis, we may call it pelvic sympathetic trunk, because it has reached to the pelvis. When it was in the thorax, we call it thoracic sympathetic chain. When it reaches to the neck, we call it cervical sympathetic chain or cervical sympathetic chain. Is that clear? So according to region, we name it. But it's the same sympathetic chain. So here we call it lumbar sympathetic trunk. And this one is my sacral sympathetic trunk. I hope it's clear. Because we know L4, L5, after that we have this pelvic region. So now this here With the yellow, I'll be showing sympathetic. My color scheme has changed now. And with the blue, I'll be showing parasympathetics. Right now, I'm not showing any of the spinal nerves. Now I'm showing you only the sympathetics and parasympathetics. Now, we have inferior mesenteric plexus. Inferior mesenteric, name suggests it has to do something with the mesentery. So when I say inferior, we must be having superior as well. So now, then we have superior hypogastric plexus. Hypogastric correspond to the hypogastric, suprapubic region. So we have superior hypogastric plexus. Now you can see I have contributions from lumbar sympathetic trunk. Do you remember when I was talking the nerve supply of the ureter, I mentioned that we have lumbar splanchnic nerves. So you are looking at these nerves who are coming from these lumbar sympathetic trunk and they are going to the superior hypogastric plexus. And these are lumbar splanchnic nerves. Make sense? The nerves, the splanchnic nerves who come from the thoracic segment, we call them greater, lesser and least. Actually those are thoracic splanchnic nerves. We have lumbar splanchnic nerves. Then we have pelvic splanchnic nerves. Got it? So, and now you can see we have direct contribution to the inferior mesenteric plexus from the lumbar sympathetic trunk, and then we have contribution to the superior hypogastric plexus. And inferior mesenteric plexus is connected with the superior hypogastric plexus. So if there is, so these two, they are supplying via this, and they are also going by this route. So there is some mix up. So if accidentally you cut these, still we can get some supply. And now we are looking at lower down. What name you suggest for them? They are coming from sacral. So we call them sacral splanchnic. I can use this word. I can say sacral visceral. I can say lumbar visceral. Make sense? I can use the same word. The words are different but meanings are the same. So I have from the sacral sympathetic trunk, so I call them sacral splanchnic. And now these are contributing where? Right inferior hypogastric plexus. So I had one superior hypogastric plexus which divides into one inferior on right side, one inferior on left side. So I have right and left inferior hypogastric plexuses. And these plexuses, they are also connected with the superior hypogastric. So all of them are interconnected. Trust me, when you look back, when you go back, when you try to, when inshallah, in year 2, when you will be finishing your neuroscience block, then you will be realizing to a certain extent, not to the full extent. Neuroscience is one of the difficult areas in human body to understand. You will realize that all the nerves have been connected somehow with each other. We learn them differently, but they are connected. There are so many overlaps, which as a beginner, probably you, if I could have bring this lecture in foundation, the whole class will never learn a word. If I tried with your senior batch, do a little bit in MSK, everybody dies there. Then I said, okay, this year I will make a change. Then I tried with the cardiopulmonary, it works. It gave you some idea, but I just talk a little bit. I didn't say the whole thing. So I just touch upon that part which was necessary to understand some basic information. And then, now probably, when you have done your GI, when you have done with your renal, so now you will be able to understand in a better way. Because we have to have step by learning. We have a gradual process of learning. So now, I hope inferior mesenteric plexus, superior hypogastric and inferior hypogastric plexus are clear to you. Is this clear? Now, these are called hypogastric nerves. And when I'll be talking about ureter, I'll be telling you, ureter has contribution from hypogastric nerve. So what is hypogastric nerve? A nerve, a sympathetic nerve, which carries sympathetic fibers from superior hypogastric plexus to inferior hypogastric plexus. Make sense? And then, now I talk about, these were the sympathetics. Now where are parasympathetic? Parasympathetic we learn, we get contribution from vagus. But vagus is finishing at one level. At the 2/3 part of the transverse colon. Beyond that, vagus is not coming. it comes till the junction between 2/3 and last 1/3. So at that point, almost near to the splenic flagell, beyond that vagus supplies, the supply from vagus is not is not there, is not great. So now for the lower segment, now still we have sympathetic fibers who are running with the spinal cord. Now we take them where? We take them down in the sacral segment. And what are they? S2, 3 and 4. This is the place, from this place we can retrieve sympathetic fibers for the organs who lives in the pelvis. So their supply is coming because the vagus was enough for the upper part. But for the pelvis, we have direct sympathetic, parasympathetic nerves which we can take out from the spinal cord. From where? From the lowermost segments, S2, 3 and 4. So these blue are the sources for the parasympathetics now. Now the story of the vagus is gone. That's why we don't mention vagus with urine. We talk about vagus with kidney. When we talk about nauseated, we are indicating that this nausea is because vagus is supplying to the kidney. So we have a problem with the kidney, a stone in the kidney, any obstruction in the kidney, we will get nauseated feeling. We may get, with pain we get vomiting also. That's another mechanism. There are so much overlaps. Peristalsis, most of you were thinking it is because of autonomics. And then we learn with the ureter, no, there is some pacemaker thing, and which is far away from that mechanism. So there are so many layers for our understanding. And more we explore, better we are. If you talk these basic information for someone, older people, they will never swallow this. They say, what the hell are you talking? Your book is wrong. This book is wrong, that book is wrong, that. Because knowledge is not my property. Knowledge is not your property. I learned something, I brought it to you. You may learn something better than me. You might have brought it to me back. And this is how it goes. Nobody is perfect. Everybody has mistakes. Everybody has shortcomings. Some shortcomings is of lack of understanding. The other thing is every day newer concepts are coming. And if you not update yourself with the newer concept, probably you will be lost. That's why they retire people at certain age. So, we talk about, so now you can see that S2, 3 and 4. They are contributing where? They are contributing to the inferior hypogastric plexus. Guys, I'm just drawing on one side. Remember, the similar pattern is on this side also. So don't think, I heard some people asking sometimes, and it's good, if you don't understand, it's good to ask. Nobody minds for that. So now you can see supplies coming from this side, similar supplies are coming from that side. So the parasympathetics are going where we can see that they have gone to the right inferior hypogastric plexus. Yes, ma'am.
Doctor, can you repeat the vagus part?
Vagus part is there, my dear. Vagus ends at the transverse colon. Which part of the transverse colon? When transverse colon is about to become splenic flexure. At that level, that is the maximum limit where splenic, vagus was supplying. Beyond that, vagus is not supplying. So now, any part further, we have contribution from the lower segment. And the lower segment, so we need parasympathetic for the pelvic organs. There is secretion, there is everything. So, for that reason, we get it from these segments. And look, spinal cord has everything. But you cannot take everything everywhere. Your dad has everything for you. But he gives you certain things at certain time. If you are a child and you ask him, Dad, I need 1 million real. And mashallah, your dad is a billionaire. He can give you, but he will say, why you need it? No, I'm not giving to you. Because he see that, is it your need? If you think you don't need it, he will never give it to you. But once you prove that, yes, I'm a strong person, I need it, and you have a valid reason, then you're going to be given. Got it? A child, a grade 2 child will ask the dad, I need a car. Will dad give him? But once you reach to an age where you become an adult, you will be given any car what you want according to his affordability. So now, pelvic splanchnic nerves. Now these pelvic splanchnic nerves, and we use the word sacral splanchnic. So pelvic splanchnic nerve is dedicated for parasympathetics. When we use the word pelvic splanchnic, it means parasympathetic fibers. So counterpart, how we can say the sympathetic for the pelvis? So that we call sacral spleen, to differentiate between them. So there are so many overlaps, and if you are not judgmental for these things, probably you cannot anticipate what is happening. I hate this 1 hour thing because you are always. So now we get parasympathetic. Now it is going backward. It's going upwards to supply the superior. So this you can see that this is how they are connected. And now functions. Sympathetic, we all know, we talk about it a lot. Where does it go? Where does it go? Now, there, this is what you're asking. So you can see the whole sequence. We are getting the sympathetic fibers within the thoracic cavity, right? Then we are getting our greater, lesser and least. To which part? To the celiac ganglion. So from 5th to 9th, they are going, we call it greater splanchnic. And then this one is my lesser splanchnic and ganglion 10 to 11. And it's going to aortic-renal. And then the lower one, the least splanchnic, ganglion number 12, and that is going there to the renal plexus. Make sense? So we are getting sympathetics all around. And then we can see here lumbar splanchnic. And then you can see sacral splanchnic nerves, and you are looking at different segments. And S2 to S2, pelvic splanchnic. So now we know that these are parasympathetic and these are sympathetic. That's why they are given a green color and a yellow color, and they are differentiating the region. I hope it's clear. The purple is showing you, the blue is showing you the direct from the spinal cord, and then you are deriving all these sources. Is that clear? A further detailing of the segments, and you can see that we talk about it. I don't think we need to, that was obvious from my drawings. Is there any ambiguity with greater splanchnic, lesser splanchnic, least splanchnic, and lumbar splanchnic? It's clear? Now, this is how they actually look like. They are not like this, that everything is clean and neat. We have them like this. So we have a mesh of the structures, and which are supplanted. And these all are the nerves of the posterior terminal wall of the abdomen and pelvic cavity. And this is how they are making these different plexuses, celiac plexus and aortic-renal, and you name this. You can see the sympathetic chain which is going down, is coming down and is going behind. And there you are looking at lumbosacral trunk. You can see this. Somebody was asking me yesterday. I told him, gentlemen, I cannot show you. I have to do a deep dissection. Then only, God. So then only you can see. I hope I'm clear so far. Now, this is important. So what we see here, now we have a background. So our background says sympathetics are shown with red and parasympathetic shown with blue. So then they have further differentiation. So we have a talk between red and blue. So now you can see that from the brain they are coming, we know it, and now we have these, and you can see that how we are getting supplies to the kidney and to the upper ureter, and which segment of the spinal cord these are being relayed. We learn about these steps. I hope I'm clear. There should not be any ambiguity. You can see it very clearly. It's the same description. Now, ureter, lower 3 thoracics, first lumbar, renal and aortic plexus, and superior inferior hypogastric plexus. Are we clear for these sources? Yes. They are giving, basically what happens, in the wall of the ureter, we had a ureteric plexus, which is not a shaped one, it's from above to below, whole length of the ureter. And this plexus gets innervation, is getting supplies from these sources. Lower 3 thoracic, first lumbar, renal and aortic plexus, and superior inferior hypogastric plexus. So they all are contributing towards this ureteric plexus, which is present within the wall of the ureter. Now, upper ureter, renal and aortic plexus, they contribute here.
The requirement to consider the hypogastric nerve's location, which is located in the body, from which kind of ligament?
Say it again.
Like when we say, for example, least splanchnic, we say it is T12, right? So if you want to apply the same concept for the intermediate ureter, for example, for the hypogastric nerves, what's their segment?
I have already explained. Now you have to read it. Then you understand. I cannot put everything everywhere. People know what is hypogastric nerve. Now, people know what is inferior hypogastric plexus. People know what is superior hypogastric plexus. I cannot bring the whole chapter again. I spent good 30 minutes in talking about those. So you have to correlate, learn to correlate the things. It's not like what you learn in your grade 1, it has to be taught again today. No, you have to incorporate in your mind. So these are the sources for the ureter. And upper ureter, renal and aortic plexus. So we know how and who contributes in renal and aortic plexus. If you are in doubts, go back to this previous slide. You will be knowing it. So, intermediate ureter, hypogastric nerve and superior hypogastric plexus. We know it. What are the ingredients of hypogastric nerve? Who makes hypogastric nerve? Put all of them in one place. So you know the source. So the middle ureter gets supplies from hypogastric nerve and superior hypogastric plexus. And lower ureter, hypogastric nerve and inferior hypogastric plexus. So these plexuses, who receives thoracic segments, who receives lumbar segments, who receives splanchnic segments, who receives visceral, who receives parasympathetics. So these plexuses, they are contributing to different segments of the ureter.
For organ to supply this extensively, how is it even possible to do surgery?
How is
it even possible to do surgery without harming any of the nerves?
these nerves? Some of them have to be harmed. There is no mechanism. These are theoretical things. When you go in practice, you have seen how complex was that picture. We cannot rush for fiber. We are dependent on, we have a time constraint. We have to make this person walking nicely, happy, going home. It's not like we are not working on a cadaver where we have to separate out each fibers. The real surgery is not dissection. The real surgery, surgeon has to be fast, conclusive, and the objective is this person should go back to normal. In a dead person, we have no concern, so we sit down with each fiber. That is for our original learning. But once we are cutting, like I make a cut here, I cut so many sensory nerves. I don't care for that. My priority is, if someone's radial is bleeding, I have to focus for radial at the moment. So I have to prioritize my things. We do so many things, but on the other hand, we cut so many things. So many heals back, so many don't heals back. But there is no mechanism that you are touching on cellular level. There is no surgery established yet where you are working at cellular level. We cannot target mechanisms. We can target major obvious organs. I hope this is clear, and that explains everything which was bothering us. Now again, another relook at how kidney gets its supply. So you can see that aortic-renal, we know aortic-renal who contributes. We know renal ganglion who contributes. And you can see that this is our sympathetics and this is our parasympathetic. They travel, even I mentioned the vagal trunk also contributes for the kidney. So any pain which emerges from the kidney and the part of the pelvis which is connected to the kidney, any pain which comes from the kidney due to stone, due to some other pathology, will manifest with nausea and vomiting. Why we get nausea and vomiting with the kidney thing? Because vagus is connected and vagus is also supplying to my stomach. So this is how the connection has been established. This picture is there in your material which has been provided. Now for the urinary bladder and for the urethra and the prostate, this slides explain everything in detail. Now urinary bladder, remember it has detrusors. We talk about regarding urinary bladder. Did I talk about the sphincters of urinary bladder? Not yet. So wait. Today I'll be talking at 10 o'clock for this slide. Now this is for the bladder and the urethra part. Now this is again so I have three supporting pictures where I'm explaining about what we learned today, superior hypogastric plexus and inferior hypogastric plexus. And then we know how they are connected. So these are the different ganglions, and these are important when we have to learn about the supplies of the urinary bladder, urethra and the prostate. Make sense? Thank you very much.